welcome to the podcast. You probably were like, why is this girl reaching out to me? Her background is integrative medicine, all things health and wellness. You're probably like, what does she want to talk to me about?
I did think that. I honestly was like, did she email the wrong
Was this
Tim?
an accident?
Yeah, honestly.
Well, for your context, Tim, so this podcast originally centered around physical health and wellness, but over time, I felt really called to expand beyond that and to dig deeper into emotional and spiritual health too. And honestly, looking at the world around us today, especially with the state of our culture and our political climate here in the States, it's pretty clear that emotional and spiritual confusion are at an all-time high. And I came across you and your work and immediately was raptured by what you were saying. And I was like, this is someone I really want to have a fun conversation with. And quite honestly, Tim, those are the folks that I've been bringing on the show, right? To discuss topics and ideas that I feel like I myself have questions about and need to hear answers to. And I'm sure that if I have those questions, there certainly are a lot of other people as well. And also too with WellnStrong, Tim, it's been cool to kind of see that this has become more of like a ministry. I started it in 2020. My mom's been dealing with stage 4 breast cancer for the past several years. She's the reason I started this platform. All that to say, it's evolved from, a strong stance on integrative medicine and complementary therapies for cancer, which I'm still an advocate for, right? But now my focus is more on a faith-based approach to wellness, recognizing that we are to be stewards of our bodies, but at the end of the day, we are to recognize that God is in control. So that is a balance, right? It's always, where do you draw the line? But the conversations thus far have pretty much centered around that. But it's been a journey. Wow.
Good. I mean, good for you. It sounds like a journey. I want to hear more about it, but I know we got to jump into this. But that's awesome. And I think that I'm right there with you, by the way, with all this stuff. I mean,
I know you
think there's so much. I mean, I talk a lot about the spiritual side of all this stuff, but I'm also very curious about where you've been the last 4 years in talking about the physical health side of things. I think that the church, man, it's so interesting. Like, I look around the church and it's like we are really adamant about the really important things. But then when it comes to, physical health, it's like it takes a back seat, Let's disciple, let's get into the word, let's all those good things. And let's go to Kentucky Fried Chicken after church.
Right?
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, why are we poisoning ourselves?
Especially here in the South, it's very it's been a change.
Paul says it profits a man little, right? But it still profits a man. Physical health is still an important piece of this,
So true.
So anyways, I actually am right in line. So when you reached out, I'm like, man, maybe this is God trying to say something to you, Tim. Like, McDonald's, stop it, kind of thing. Because, I'll be honest with you, when you're on the road,
I can imagine,
which I travel, it is so difficult. I long to be home for so many reasons, but my wife's home cooking is number one because it is so clean. It's so healthy. She's putting things in my body that I need that I just don't get anywhere else. And it's just easier to, stop at Chick-fil-A or whatever, after an event. It's 10 o'clock. I haven't eaten, you're starving. Nothing's open. I mean, it's just so.
No, I can imagine. I know. I feel like, especially for me with podcasts, like my mental acuity and focus is dictated by what I eat, right? Even if it's like a couple hours beforehand. So totally relate. But kudos to you for recognizing that, something you might need to work on.
Honestly, it's like, even today, I'm like, okay, because we built like the studios in the basement of our home.
It looks awesome.
It's so cool. Like, we got our basement finished in the summer and we have a gym.
That's awesome.
In the, other side of that wall. And it is like, it's great, and I don't use it as much because, like, my wife's down there every day, she was in there this morning and cause like last night, I'm tired, I'm jet lagged. I'm like,
you have kids too.
And then it's like, even just to take them to drive them to school this morning, I was like, okay, I got to do this. Cause she would have done it, but I'm like, I got to get back on schedule. I can't sleep in.
No, I can imagine.
So
sweet.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, this is going to be one of many conversations you and I will have. This one happens to be recorded, but anytime you have any health questions offline, I'm here.
Sweet.
But just to dive right into him. So one of the core messages I've heard you emphasize again and again over the past few weeks since I've been, listening to your stuff is the importance of replacing bad thinking with good thinking. Mm-hmm. So to start us off, I would love to ask, how can we, and this is a bit of a loaded question, as Christians today, be more discerning and filtering everything through God's truth rather than through what culture tells us?
Yeah, this is a good question because a lot of times, kind of on the flip side, what happens is we interpret God's word through the culture, okay? And so it's like God can't be saying that because I'm looking around at the world and they're saying the exact opposite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinterpret what God has to say here. And so I think the first step is just to be aware of that. There is a sense in which our worldview, everyone has a worldview. Mm-hmm. And our worldview, I think it was it Francis Schaeffer who says, some people catch a worldview like they catch a cold. Okay. It's not something that you planned. It's just, it happened to you. Hey, you wake up in the morning, man, I'm not feeling so good. And I think that worldviews are kind of like that. If we're not careful, we can just take on a bad worldview. Mm-hmm. And that typically, we could look around and talk about some of those worldviews. Like there's naturalism, like, man, supernatural stuff doesn't really exist. That's something that, by the way, in the West, lots of Christians have to fight against that. Because our kind of like there's a skepticism we have against anything supernatural. We just think about, there's God, there's maybe some angels, that's about it, that kind of thing. So there's relativism, the idea that there is no truth. And so you have your truth and I have my truth, and let's just kind of live and let live as if someone could just have their own truth, right?
Yes.
And you can have your own opinion. Yeah, jump in.
Can I stop you right there, Tim? Just for listeners right now, can we just define truth, right? Yeah. As you and I see it? Because I think just like you said, a lot of people are this is my truth. What's your truth, right? And there's a big issue with that. Very
good question. So a moment ago when I said, that's just true for you, that's not true for me. Oftentimes when people are talking like that, really what they're talking about is their opinion or their preference, okay? Like their likes and dislikes. You may like chocolate ice cream. Someone else may like vanilla. So vanilla would be their truth and your truth would be chocolate, okay? But we all understand that's preference stuff. That's likes and dislikes. When we say truth, we're talking about what corresponds with reality. Okay. This is often called, by the way, philosophers call this the correspondence theory of truth. And it's we all understand this. It's what matches when a claim or belief matches up with reality. So if I said, I drive a red Ferrari. Okay. Now, anyone who knows me knows that's not true. Okay. I don't make that kind of money, nor do I want that kind of car. I would, it would probably become an idol for me. I wouldn't even want to drive it because I wouldn't want something bad to happen to it or something. But you would know that's not true. Well, how do you know it's not true? Well, you could just check my driveway. Okay. When you check the driveway, you would see that claim that I have a red Ferrari doesn't match up with reality. Okay. So that's what we mean by truth. Sometimes people talk about objective truth, and that's the kind of truth that is, like I just described, corresponds with reality. It's outside of whether I believe it or like it or not. Okay. So for example, if I were to jump off the roof of my house, it is just objectively true that I will fall to the ground. It doesn't, and my beliefs about it, I could believe really hard that I can fly. I could not like that it's going to hurt when I hit the ground. All those things, could be the case, but it doesn't stop me from hitting the ground, right? The truth of the matter is that gravity causes you to fall, So, so that's what we mean. Now, sometimes people talk about subjective truth, and subjective truth is the idea of preferences and opinions.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying. Those are great analogies. So important. And with that too, Tim, so this is another bit of a loaded question. How can Christians lovingly push back against the idea that, just like you said, truth is whatever works for you? And interestingly, this past Sunday at my church, this man, John Cox, you'd actually like him. He has a podcast. Never heard about him before up until Sunday. He had a great talk on, or he said something like, love comes in two flavors, grace and truth, right? Love and limits. And he always talks about love and limits. And I love that. So how can we share truth in love, right, with those who don't know truth? And there's certainly verses in scripture too that highlight this. I mean, Paul writes, to speak the truth in love. And, Jesus says, like, those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So when we love someone, right, like we discipline them, like they both coexist, which I think people don't necessarily understand. So, I mean, there's just like this precipice on each side of, if you truth too hard, like people get ashamed and go away. But on the other hand, if like we don't speak truth, right, then no one learns or understands. So how do we find that right balance?
By the way, I think every parent knows truth and love, or truth and grace, because there are times when I love my kids more than hardly anything in this world. Okay, like God, and then my family. And I would die for my kids. But that doesn't mean that they get to do whatever they want. It doesn't mean I affirm whatever they want. If they want to eat candy before bed, it ain't happening, And that, by the way, is because I love them, not because I'm like angry with them or because I like hate them or something like that. Okay. Even they might interpret it that way. They might, oh, Dad, you're so unfair. Like, if you loved me, you would let me eat this. No, it's because I love you. I'm going to do what's right for you. Okay. What's good for you. So I think parents understand that, that love and the truth kind of come together, or truth and grace come together. Jesus, full of grace and truth. Jesus did it perfectly. We have to remember we don't. Okay. We should strive to do our best. And I think that for some people, and this is like a heart check time, okay, gut check time, there's going to be some people listening who they lean harder on truth. I think that apologists like me, that's kind of our thing, right? So we kind of we can be more aggressive. And there are times, man, I got to check my own heart. I do this thing called red pen logic with Mr. B. We respond to people's challenges online. And there are times where I will show my wife a video that I just made. She sees all my stuff before it goes out. And she'll tell me straight up, Tim, I don't like the way you said that. Or you look like you're angry. Or and she will call me out on those things. And there's times where and it breaks my heart because I put all the work into editing the video and shooting it. Now I got to go back to this studio in the basement and I got to re-record. And that's happened before. And so there's some of us who are like hardcore, lean on the truth, and we can get a little too harsh. And then there are people who maybe are more touchy-feely, they're going to lean on grace and love. And I know this sounds almost bad to say, but they just need to be aware that there's a liability. There's a ditch on that side too, where you can compromise speaking the truth. Okay. So there's a ditch on one side, to like the truth without any love. And then there's all love and no truth. And Paul says, as you pointed out, in 1 Corinthians 13, speaking about love and spiritual gifts, some other things, he says, love does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. So always those things are together. And there's going to be times where we fail at that. I mean, I've failed at it many times, and I've had to go to people and ask for forgiveness because, we're all just trying to figure it out. Yeah. So it is possible, and that should be what we strive to do. I think practically, I think we can know what's true by just going and looking into God's word and being discipled by the right people. But then the practical side, this is where it gets hard, right? Where I'm now sitting down.
Yeah. Can we do like a real life situation here?
Yeah. Well, I've been in lots of situations where I'm talking to people who, are transgendered or LGBT, people in my own life, people online, you name it.
Yeah.
And one thing I do is try to put myself in their shoes. Okay. what does it sound like to them to hear what I'm saying? And that kind of helps me adjust my own language. How am I going to communicate this to you? It helps to picture someone. Honestly, when I'm talking with someone online, they don't know me from anybody and I don't know. And so it's like, okay, I want to imagine that I'm talking with that loved one who and that personalizes it. I think a big problem with our culture is social media and being online. And I know social media is supposed to bring us together, make us more social. It actually makes us antisocial. There are things that you and I would never say to someone face to face that we say online. Okay. Like you think of keyboard warriors, and there's keyboard courage. There's this, I'm going to just let you have it. Caps. Where's the caps? Okay. Caps lock is on. Here we go, kind of thing. But if you were sitting across from me, I would never have that nerve, So I think it's really helpful to imagine that person's right there. And I'm just telling you, I have had the sweetest conversations with people that I have read penned. There was I didn't realize they were transgender. This person was biologically male, but had gone through every surgery you could imagine. And so they had posted something online about the Bible's view of homosexuality. And I thought, actually, there's some real mistakes here. Okay. And so I just wanted to correct them. No, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just trying to say, here's what the Bible, here's what it says. Okay. About this topic. And at first they were in the comments really angry. So I reached out, direct message, said, I'm not attacking you. I love you. And I just want to clarify what the Bible is really teaching on this point. And by the end of the conversation, this individual had invited me next time I'm in their city, let's go for coffee.
That's
it was just this sweet thing that you would never think would happen in where I just did a response video against your thing, but we're still friends at the end of this. That's the way it should be.
I love that, Tim. And I mean, that leads to my next question too. Why do you think truth has become so offensive? And I think too, to your point of that story earlier, it just highlights the fact that people really want to be understood first, right? Even just whatever someone's going through, this man also said on Sunday, he said that company metabolizes pain, something to that effect, where if when you're with people, right? Community, not company. Community metabolizes pain. And the whole point of that too is just to highlight the fact that when you're with someone who understands you, or at least can empathize with you, it halves the pain you're going through. So I feel that could also be applied to the offense that people take too at these hardcore beliefs that they have, or quote unquote their own truths, right? If they at first at least feel like they're being understood, even if it's someone by an opposing view, they'll be more inclined to hear what that person has to say. Have you found that to be true?
I think that's true. I think that's totally true. So truth is one of these things, especially on issues like faith, because it's so personal.
Right.
Because of things like because of the issues that we debate a lot in our culture are more identity issues. It's not just what I believe, it's who I am.
Yeah.
So I am a Christian, or someone might say I am gay, or I am transgendered, or whatever. Okay. So because these are deeply held beliefs, when we disagree, when we say that's not true, all of a sudden that becomes super offensive. Look, we're not logic machines, right? As much as I'm working on a book right now, and I'm trying to teach critical thinking. I think there's a need for a book, a resource on helping people think critically.
Especially with ChatGPT.
Oh my goodness, it is.
What a time.
What a time, by the way, and we could do another conversation on this another day.
Yes, please.
But when my book's ready to come out, I've been thinking about this because we outsource our thinking. Okay. So just like I outsource my navigation, I get lost pulling out of my driveway. Okay. Honestly, some people have this internal GPS system. My wife is one of those people. We can be somewhere and she's like, there's north. And I'm thinking, how do you know where north is? Like we can be inside. It's not even like she's looking where the sun is. She just knows. Okay. It's like I'm watching geese, and they're flying in a V formation right now going south. And I'm thinking, how do you guys are better at this than like I am, like I can't, if you said, Tim, go south, I would be in trouble. So I use my GPS for everything. I outsource my navigation to GPS. We outsourced our memory to Google. We don't need to memorize anything. It's like at our disposal. Whenever I need it, boom, pull up Google. Yeah. And now we are outsourcing our thinking. People are going to ChatGPT and say, give me an argument for this.
Yeah.
I got this comment in my Facebook. Okay, respond to it. They're not thinking anymore. And by the way, ChatGPT is not a reliable source. Okay. There's an echo chamber filtering effect that happens. And I'll just give you one quick illustration about that. So there's this Muslim apologist named Lily J. She's really popular, blonde hair, and people have probably seen her videos where she'll say, "Hey, ChatGPT, I have a question," and then she'll ask it like, "Is in one word, tell me if Jesus is God," and then ChatGPT says, "No, okay, Jesus is not God." Well, I gave the exact same prompt to my ChatGPT. And it knows who I am, okay? Because I've used it for a number of different things. And it said,
interesting.
Yes, the exact opposite answer. Wait a second. I thought this was just giving me factual information.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out it's responding based off of who you are as a person. There's a filtering or echo chamber thing happening, just like it happens on, Instagram.
Right.
I would see, you watch one video that's like on some wild topic, think of a conspiracy. I'm not going to name one because I know people hold wild ideas. Okay. But just imagine like the most ridiculous conspiracy. You watch one video on that and now you're seeing now you see like 3 of them, 4 of them. And all the counter arguments are filtered out.
Yeah.
And now what's wild is not only do you come to believe that based on what you're seeing through your feed, but you become more confident about it because it's like that's all you're seeing now.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, everyone must believe this because you're not even seeing the other side. You're not seeing counter arguments. So that's kind of a tangent there, but I think that you're right. ChatGPT, social media, these things are impacting how we think, and it's making us, for lack of a better word, dumber.
Yeah. To that point too, Tim, though, like, you were talking about ChatGPT kind of reaffirms all these beliefs we previously thought we had. Therefore, it helps us dig our heels deeper into whatever, argument or logic we're adhering to.
Yeah.
How do we not get lost in that rabbit hole, right? Because emotions are very strong. And one thing I always say a lot on this podcast too, and I've had conversations about this, is, how facts are not, or feelings aren't facts.
Yeah.
And the importance of being discerning, between what does God's truth say versus what your emotions say? Because our emotions are fleeting, right? 1 second to the next, they change.
So I've been thinking a lot about this lately. It's a good question. There's a book by a psychologist. It's named, what's the title? The Scout Mindset. Not a Christian author, but she is writing about our motivations. Like there are times when I watch something on my feed and maybe it's about Christianity. And because I'm a Christian apologist, I'm like, I want this to be true. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something inside my heart that says, I want to affirm this. In fact, she says there's often questions we ask when we come up against evidence. And there are 2 main questions that someone will ask, depending on whether or not they want that thing to be true. So the one question might be, can I believe this? Can I believe this? So I see some evidence, I see a fact, and it's like, I want to believe it, so can I? Well, yeah, look, there's a reason right there. I can believe this. But when I don't, let's say I watch an atheist video or a deconstruction video, and I'm like, man, I don't agree with this. I don't like this. I'll ask the question, must I believe this? Not can I believe it? Must I believe this? And when I ask that question, it's kind of like, do I have to believe this? Well, actually, I can see a problem here, here, and here. So now I'm talking myself out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So what I would say is when we approach this stuff, we need to be just aware that we have motivations. We have a bias. There are times when confirmation bias is kind of what they call it in philosophy, can really be strong. Like Christians want Christianity to be true. And so there's times where they'll run from counter evidence without even really looking at it or understanding it. What I want to do is my best to understand where that other person is coming from. I want to not straw man their argument, which would be like a straw man is like, think of a scarecrow. I can beat up a scarecrow, no problem. But if I had if there was a real man in this room, 200-pound man, I'd have a hard time, taking them down. Because we do that with arguments. We kind of turn them into these straw man, scarecrow things so we can knock them over. I want to take on a steel man. If my beliefs are true, then they should be able to stand up against the strongest arguments, okay? And that's, by the way, the real question. Not can I believe this? Must I believe it? The real question is it true? Does it correspond with reality? Did Jesus really rise from the dead? I want to know if that's true. I know it makes me feel hopeful and good and all those things, thinking about Jesus conquering death, okay? But I want to know did this really happen 2,000 years ago? Did Jesus walk out of the tomb? Is there good reasons to believe that? I think there is.
Yeah.
Is it true that God exists? I think there's really good reasons to believe that God exists, from fine-tuning in the universe, from the origin of the universe, from the origin of life, from the origin of morality, from our consciousness. I mean, there's all of these cool reasons to believe there's something, a prime reality out there that we call God, okay? Something bigger than ourselves, bigger than nature, all that stuff. So truth, I mean, going back to kind of what we were talking about, that's what and we all have to guard ourselves. There's just this there is a need for us to think better, and that requires practice. That requires hard work. Good thinking doesn't come naturally. Bad thinking comes naturally. And everyone knows that. Go on social media and you'll see viral videos and viral posts that have hundreds of thousands of likes, and it's full of fallacies. Like anyone who has read the Fallacy Detective or whatever, like a kid's book on this stuff, could see that's not right. And yet, why did everyone like it? Because bad thinking is natural.
Yeah.
And so what do we have to do? We got to work hard at this. Just like you would work hard at playing the piano or any other musical instrument. I was at a student conference the other day, just this weekend, and I asked a kid, came up, they play the flute. I said, flute's a hard instrument. It looks like it's so small. It looks like, a flute, just a blow in the thing is hard. Okay. There's a technique. And he's like, yeah. I spent hours a week, learning how to play the flute. And now he's good at it. Or an athlete, man, I'm watching the Jays. I'm a Toronto Blue Jay fan. We got Game 7 coming. I mean, this is awesome stuff, but these guys work so hard to be at that level.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do with our thinking. We don't do that. We sit in front of Netflix and we end up taking all kinds of bad ideas and have no way to filter. We talked about filtering cultural ideas, right? We just take them, accept them, and we have no guard against it.
Yeah. So true. I mean, Paul says to take our thoughts captive, right? And I look at the actual word captive, that is an aggressive word, right? That's a word that you would see in battle. So for him to use that word, that implies that this really is a battle to take your thoughts captive. And
it's even more than, that verse, 2 Corinthians 10, man, that is my verses 4 and 5. That's I need to write it on the walls. That is my verse. Honestly, when I sit down to respond to a video, this is the verse of red pen logic. Destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. That's what I want to do. Yeah. I'm not destroying people. I don't want to destroy individuals. It's their ideas that I'm after. Yeah. And but that is, again, because people can't think like they should, they interpret that as me attacking them, right? Yeah. And so you asked the question before about being offended. And I think that when you attack someone's ideas, they take it personally. They think it's like an ad hominem attack. You're attacking the man, right? And I'm not doing that. I actually love you and I'm trying to help you. This is where the idea of red pen logic comes from. I was a teacher for a number of years. And when I would take out, the red pen, so what we would do is I would take out and I would correct my students' work with a red pen. And that wasn't because I didn't like them. It's because I was trying to help them. I taught physics and math, and like some of these problems would be like a page, 2 pages long. And it was like this one point right here. This is where, circle that. You made one mathematical error here and it carried all the way through. Shoot, let me help you. Or here's what you didn't understand. And that's what the red pen, it's meant to help, not hurt. But could you imagine like my students thinking, Mr. B must hate me. Do you see all the red on my page? No. If I didn't like you, I would just say, here's your letter grade, get lost, know? No, I want you, the next time this comes up on the exam or whatever, I want you to nail this. I want you to get this. So, that's the red pen kind of mindset mentality that I'm trying to do online.
I love that. You'd appreciate this as a father. My dad would always tell my sister and I when we were younger, if we did something bad, he would always affirm, he's like, I love you, but I hate the behavior that you did, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, God loves us, but he hates the sin. So when you separate the sin from your identity, right? Like you have a completely different response to it.
That's exactly it. But because the worldview that we're living in now, our behavior is our identity. It's become one and the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's where, so if you say to someone, well, I, love this sinner, but hate the sin, they just hear the word hate. You hate me. That's what they hear.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think that theologically that makes sense, what you just said. But when you try to say that to someone, it's not going to be received right. Because again, it requires someone to think in those terms. Okay, there's behavior over here. There's my actions. And then there's who I am as a person. And those are two different things. They've been collapsed in on each other in today's kind of day and age.
Yeah, very true. The question is, how do we separate them, right? The golden question.
Yeah, and it's such an important thing. I think Christopher Yuan has a good book. He's a friend of mine. He wrote a book called Holy Sexuality, and Christopher's testimony is unreal. Okay, like it's amazing. Have you heard of Christopher?
No, I'm excited to check out his book now.
You gotta hear him speak, give his testimony. He, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm going to. He didn't grow up as a Christian at all. In fact, he realized, he would tell you pretty early, that he felt different, that he was attracted to men, and starting like engaging in that kind of behavior. In fact, but he was also very academically, smart and whatever. So he was going to become a dentist. He was actually in dental school, but he got kicked out because he was actually selling drugs, like tons of drugs, even to professors, which is kind of wild.
Oh my gosh.
He ended up, actually the FBI, I think they came and knocked on his door one day. He had a ton of drugs on him, and he went to prison. And it was in prison where he discovered a Bible. It was actually on the top of a trash can. And he picked it up, started reading it. It's just a wild story. He found out in prison also that he was HIV positive from living that lifestyle, and ends up reading the Bible and talk about, so then he goes to the pastor or like the chaplain, and he says, I'm gay. What do I do with that? And the chaplain's like, kind of progressive Christianity. He's like, don't worry, we can reinterpret this. It's not that kind of homosexuality in scripture. It's something different. And so you're okay. Well, he keeps reading the Bible, and he's like, no, that's not what it says here. That's it. I don't agree with what the pastor said. And anyways, he ended up getting out on good behavior, a couple other things. He got out early, and he went to seminary, and now he has. Wow. Does he have a doctorate from Moody Bible Institute? I think so.
What a story!
It is.
I can't wait to read that.
So, because you don't hear a lot of those stories, okay? Here's a guy who, by the way, still struggles with same-sex attraction, okay? He wouldn't say that God just took away his attractions, but it's one of those things that he's mortifying. Like, it's like, this is a thing that I'm not engaged in that anymore. My life is fully, and he doesn't identify by his sexuality. It's like, God doesn't want me to be heterosexual, he would say. He said he wants my sexuality to be holy. And what that means for him is he's going to be a celibate man, unless God changes his, desires or whatever.
Yeah.
So, anyways, powerful, So here's like, God, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit. How do you convince someone? And I think we're as persuasive and compelling as we can, but then we leave it to God. Mm-hmm. And God is really the heart changer. He's the mind changer, Yeah. The transformation of the mind and heart, this is something the Spirit does like no one else can. So I consider my job in discussions with people, it's like, look, I'll take care of my end of the thing.
Yeah.
There's 100% kind of on me to do my best, but then there's 100% on God to do the rest, to do everything else,
I love that.
So it's like, I'm just going to do my best. It's not a 50-50. It's like literally God's going to do what God's going to do. That's 100% on him.
Yeah.
But as much as it depends on me, I'm going to equip myself. I'm going to do my best to be as persuasive as possible and then let God work.
Yeah.
And
you plant the seeds.
And he has. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Plant the seeds. So, by the way, so my boss wrote a book called Tactics, and it was life-changing for me. And it's all about engaging people with questions and kind of a game plan and having conversations. It's probably outside the Bible, it's the book that's probably transformed my thinking the most. In fact, the new book I'm writing, I've got his book in my mind. Like, how can I write a book kind of like his, but for this topic? And he talks about your goal should be a stone in someone's shoe. That's all it is. So when I'm on the airplane flying home from my event, and this person starts a conversation, I'm probably not going to get them to the cross and let's say a sinner's prayer or something, whatever. They're not going to convert next to me, likely. Maybe they will, but my goal isn't to save them. That's God's thing.
Yeah.
My goal is just to put a stone in their shoe.
Yeah.
And maybe we're talking about, where everything came from, or maybe we're talking about, the good that Christianity has accomplished in the world, or, whatever it may be. Here's a little stone in your shoe, something to think about.
Yeah.
All right.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good, Tim. You're giving me all these books now. I'm going to need to get another bookshelf because I'm not going to have enough room for all of them. But I'm excited. They sound like awesome ones.
Yeah. Well, I would tell you, anyone I've recommended Tactics to, and I recommend it all the time, usually send me a message later saying, where's this book been all my life? Yeah. I needed this, and I'm so glad I've read it. And I tell, I'll be speaking at my daughter's school this week. My oldest is in high school now.
I was going to ask
14.
how old they were. Okay.
Yeah. So 14, 12, and 9. And I do quite a bit of work with the upper school, speaking at chapels. We're doing an apologetic series. So I'm there every month.
That's awesome.
Doing a cool thing. Yeah. Tomorrow night we're doing a thing. Yeah, actually, we're going to talk about some of the stuff we've actually been talking about. I got something I've just been working on called "Why Johnny Can't Think Anymore." How social media and AI are making us dumber, and it's just going to be a short talk for parents tomorrow night, just to equip them. But I would tell those high schoolers, you can't graduate this school if you haven't read Tactics.
Yeah.
I'm not I will block diplomas from being given out. You must read this,
That's
kind of like C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. There's some works Staples out there that are just really important stuff.
Yeah.
That are worthy of our attention. And I say Tactics is one of those.
On the topic of works, Tim, so kind of an unrelated question, but not really because everything relates in what we're talking about. But for someone who has experienced a significant amount of suffering, and I shared something with you earlier that my family has been through over the past few months, certainly suffering makes us wrestle with God, right? And I always say that, when you wrestle with someone, you get really close to them. And that's why I think some of the people who have experienced the hardest, battles in life are often the closest to God. But there's always that period of time, I feel like, after that tragic event where you do doubt and you do wrestle with God and you do question your faith. And you highlighted some reasons before as to, just from a logical perspective, how we can prove the existence of God. But for someone who is in that season, who is really questioning their faith, really questioning, why did God permit something so terrible to happen? What would you say to them? And, perhaps what works or books might you recommend that could help them through that season?
Yeah, this is a really good question. It's a hard question. The way you put it, what would you say to someone? And whenever I meet someone who's asking about evil and suffering, one of the first things I'll do is kind of ask for their story. Like, where have you experienced suffering? Oftentimes, as an apologist, I want to launch into, here's the logical reason. Like, here, I want to answer the challenge from the intellectual side.
Right.
And I think that misses the mark completely if that person is actually going through suffering right now. It's kind of like John Lennox, who's a kind of a famous apologist.
I've heard of him.
He's used this illustration. This is great. A doctor would speak very differently to a medical student who's asking about cancer than they would to a patient who has just been diagnosed with cancer, right? Those are two very different people. The one person just wants some intellectual answers. Hey, I'm just curious about this. Hey, in my own practice, this might come up. The person who just found out, hey, I'm going through this thing, cancer. They need a different response. In fact, what they likely need right off the bat is, you got this. I'm here for you. Yeah. I'm with you. It's like a hug. Okay. Yeah. Versus the doctor's not going to hug the medical student. You know what I'm saying? Like, that seems like inappropriate. It doesn't work. It's not what they're looking for. So, and the problem with this question or the hard part of this question, I should say, is that oftentimes the intellectual stuff comes up when you're going through it. I never thought about evil and suffering before, but now I'm going through it and I'm thinking, God, where are you? Right. So where do we start? Well, I look at scripture and I see it full of men and women who are crying out to God in their suffering. How long, O Lord? My God, why have you forsaken me? You have these it's amazing that the biblical authors are real people, and when they struggle, they let you know. You know, there's just some raw stuff in there. Man, the Bible is full of questions and it's full of doubt and doubters. Okay. Yeah. So if you're doubting, just know you're in good company. Yeah. We go down the list. Now, probably the most famous doubter in scripture, and I always do this with audience. I say doubting, and then they all say Thomas, and I say John the Baptist. Okay, because I'm trying to throw them off. I want them to remember this. Okay, because then they laugh. They're like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" John the Baptist has some pretty serious religious credentials. He's a priest, son of a priest. He's a prophet of God. He's the cousin of Jesus. Okay, this guy, he's like, wow, that's a pretty cool reputation. Now, he's the guy who said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." He's the same guy who, when Jesus was baptized, he baptized Jesus. And then, here's a voice from heaven. This is my beloved son with whom I am well pleased. So like John had some, like, we might call mountaintop experiences. John is like, wow, I've experienced the Lord at times. And then he finds himself in a Roman prison awaiting a probable execution. And he's wondering, did I get this all wrong? What is going on here? The Messiah is supposed to set the captives free. What am I doing in here? This doesn't make any sense. You can see, and so he's suffering in prison. And he responds with that question, are you the one, or should we look for another? And this is where Jesus responds to him. Look, the blind are seeing, the deaf are hearing, the lame are walking, the poor have good news preached to them. He's like, I'm the guy. And then he turns to his disciples. Jesus turns to his own disciples and says, there's arisen no one greater than John the Baptist. And I think he says that, by the way, because they're probably thinking, man, we thought John was a stronger Christian. We thought he's doubting. Wow. He's lame or whatever, but in reality, Jesus, he pays him the highest compliment, even after expressing his doubt. And I've talked to just so many people who have been in situations like you're describing, where they're suffering, they're questioning God, and they go to the church and their pastor says, don't do that. Yeah. Stop it. Stop. Imagine stop it. That's like telling someone to stop breathing. You know what I'm saying? That's just because doubt it just comes on you. Yeah. It's not like I wanted this. And so I think that's the wrong approach. We treat asking your questions like you're confessing your sins. By the way, you should be confessing your sin. Like maybe that isn't the right illustration because we ought to, but there's the shame. There's like the, how dare you?
Right.
So I just want to encourage people, like take a page out of John the Baptist's book, express your doubt, like doubt out loud, like go to God and say, here's the issue I'm having. Why is this going on? And sometimes you're going to get an answer. It's going to be like John got his answer, but lots of us don't. Lots of us are just kind of in this period where it's like, feels like, maybe my prayers are hitting the ceiling and bouncing back down, But I would encourage people that God is working. God is there. There are things that I know about God from other, like we talked about, evidence for God, whatever, that tells me he really is there. And then what I see, and oftentimes when it comes to suffering in the moment, it feels heavy. It feels unbearable. But then you get statements like Paul saying this light momentary affliction. And you think, Paul, what are you talking? Have you never experienced suffering, Paul? When you read the suffering he went through, all kinds. He was beaten and stoned and imprisoned and shipwrecked. Just all kinds of stuff. Rough life. He calls that a light momentary affliction. Why? Because he is comparing it with eternity. Is preparing in us the eternal weight of glory. Yeah. And what I would say is for people who are going through suffering, I want to encourage them, your story isn't done yet. There isn't, and by the way, our story doesn't even end at the grave. Like there is like this bigger story. And when you see your pain in light of eternity, something happens. The perspective is helpful, I think. Yeah. In changing that. Does it answer all the challenge? No, but there's something about that says there's something bigger going on. Yeah. And of course, God uses these kinds of things all the time. I don't think it's appropriate for me to say to someone, hey, God's doing this. Because sometimes it just seems, I don't know, it's not always the right move. Right. But I think there are times when we can look back, like Joseph in the Old Testament comes to his brothers come to him. They're freaking out like, oh, this is Joseph and we sold him into slavery and all this stuff. And he says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. So God allowed this thing to happen so that I could keep all these people alive. God had a higher purpose. God is in control. God is above all of these things. And I'm just saying, if you're suffering and there is no God, it's pointless. Yeah. And there is no hope. It's completely hopeless. I would encourage people to go to Lamentations, which is one of the, saddest books in the entire Bible, and read Lamentations. And when you get to the exact middle of the book in chapter 3, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Yeah. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every single morning. Yeah. Great is your faithfulness, says my soul. Like my soul has to say it. And he says, therefore, I will hope in God. Lamentations is all about hopelessness. It's absolutely hopeless. Jerusalem, Judea, destroyed. It's over. The people are done. And Jeremiah reminds us, no, there's still hope.
Yeah. Another question too for you, Tim, that just came to mind as you were saying all that is rumination, right? Yeah. And you're talking about Joseph. So how does this relate? I was reading through Joseph this morning, and again, it's, in my opinion, I think one of the best examples in the Bible of how free will and God's sovereignty can coexist, right? Yeah. God worked through the brother's sin to save, to save many people. All that to say, when someone's doubting or ruminating rather over past decisions that they've made, how can they find comfort in God's sovereignty, right? And obviously, we don't, hindsight's 20/20. We don't have the benefit of being God, knowing the future. Like you said before, the story analogy, we only see a chapter. So for someone who's wrestling with, past decisions that they've made, thinking, the outcome could have been different had I only done X, Y, or Z. And I'm sure, those thoughts can be very tormenting, especially upon the situation. So what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would want to encourage that person to rethink how they think about decision making and God's will. I think there's this idea, and these are good Christians that hold this, okay? But it's like, there's God's will, and it's this one path, okay? And if I fall off that path, or I take a different path, then I'm screwed. Like what could have been kind of thing, you know? I actually don't see decision making and God's will in that way. I think there's actually, it's not just a path, but there's a series of paths that are in God's will, okay? And obviously, if I'm committing sin, if I'm whatever, I'm outside of God's will, okay? And there's certain passages in Scripture. It's like, it's God's will, what? To flee from sexual immorality, okay? So if I'm living in a sexual immorality, immoral life, then that would be outside of God's will. Got to get back on God's will there. But within God's will, I think there's lots of different paths. Could I still be a high school teacher right now? Absolutely. I'd probably love that job, man. I love my students. I got to disciple them in a way that I don't get to disciple now. I'm like doing this like online thing. I'm traveling. I was at a conference, 1,600 students packed out. We had 600 in overflow. Okay. Like people say nobody wants to go to an apologetics conference. Forget about it. Kids are hungry for this stuff. But it's like, so I don't get that kind of one-on-one for a long period of time discipleship. I'm doing something different. And God's using it. I think I'm in God's will now. If I took a different path as a teacher, that would have been God's will as well. Okay. So, but there are things that when we do something that, there can be regrets. There can be questions. What if, you know? But I don't think people should lose sleep over, oh my goodness, I'm no longer in God's will because I quit this job and now I'm doing this other job. God, the sovereign God of the entire universe, who is in control, isn't going to be thwarted by, you deciding, well, do we have, Fruit Loops for breakfast or do we have Cheerios? Now, I know that sounds like a very trivial example, but for God, that's what we're talking about here, okay? Yeah. He is the guy who's going to accomplish his ends. And he does it with things like the cross. He does it with people like Joseph and the life he went through. There's all kinds of ways. Now, do we often see it in our own life? No, there's a sense in which we have faith that God is going to. We trust. By the way, I need to say this before we end here, okay? Faith is not a blind leap in the dark, okay? Like real faith is trust. And oftentimes you trust someone more when there's evidence. Mm-hmm. And so things like reasons and evidence are not against faith, okay? They can strengthen your faith. I have more faith in my wife today than when I married her 17 years ago because we've had this whole life together, where she's given me all kinds of reasons and evidence to trust her. So I want people to make sure they understand that's what we're talking about. So I got faith in God. I'm trusting God with my entire life. And even these decisions that often, whether I go this way or this way, I just know God's with me and he's going to take care of me and he's going to bless as long as I'm in that broad will, not committing sin and whatever.
Right. Yeah. I don't know who said it, but it was like, love God and do what you want. Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like who said that?
Well, it sounds like, Kevin DeYoung, who's kind of a theologian, pastor. He wrote a book. What was his book called? A really short book on God's will. And it's really helpful. My boss it's probably going to be his last book. He's 75 years old. And he talks a lot about decision-making and the will of God.
Yeah. I have a book on that.
You do?
I'm trying to pull up who wrote it. St. Augustine said the love God and do what you want. Decision-making and the will of God. Oh, Gary Friesen. Does that name ring a bell?
There's a Gary Friesen. Now, I don't know if that would be my boss's view or if he is responding to his view.
I'm so curious.
So Kevin DeYoung, I'm just going to... and then I'm going to put in God's will. And let's see, it's on my bookshelf, but it's...
Tim, we need to have like a conference with all of these people and I will attend and I will just like be a sponge.
Seriously. Well, here's the book, by the way. It's called Just Do Something.
Okay.
Just Do Something is the title of Kevin DeYoung's book. And it's the subtitle is, let's see, come on, Amazon, open up here for me. The subtitle, A Liberating Approach to Finding God's Will. And by the way, we at our student conferences, we have a speaker who tackles this question, and the room is always packed because every student is looking for meaning, they're looking for purpose, and they're looking for God's will. If they're a Christian, they're following, it's like, what is God's will for my life? And this really is a liberating approach because I think it's paralyzing. Shoot, this decision, the decision I'm going to make right now about my job or about my wife or about my whatever, it's like, if I make the wrong one here, and then I just cascade this decision for the rest of my life, no, I could have remained single. I could have, I could have done so much more ministry. I'm telling you, my family, there's a lot of work when you got a family, man. It's like, and I'm homesick. I want to be home all the time. So traveling to events, it's like, man, just get me home. I'm on the plane flying away thinking, Lord, like I just want to be home.
Yeah.
So I could have remained single. I could have married someone differently. And I think different, and that would have been a different life. And I don't think I would have been outside of God's will as long as that person was a believer, whatever. Yeah. But so that whole like soulmate thing, that comes from that other view, I think, of decision making.
Yeah.
I think that I love my wife more than anything in the world, and I'm so glad she said yes to me, like she made the decision to marry me kind of thing. And we have this beautiful, beautiful life together. So, but just do something. That's probably a great book to start with.
I'm adding that to my Amazon cart as we speak. And also too, kind of bringing our conversation back to the start, with WellnStrong. I think another thing that I have learned a lot, another thing I've learned over the past few years with my mom, right? My mom's journey in terms of medical decisions, right? For treatments and whatnot. Because that certainly, talk about decision-making, that's, it's on a different level. And I also have realized that, again, at the end of the day, like whether someone chooses treatment A or treatment B, like God is still in control of the outcome, and all of our days were written in his book before one yet came to be. And just remembering those verses, Tim, has given me so much peace because we are called to take active steps of faith. And I don't know what your philosophy is over like the closed doors or open doors, right? Like some people are like, oh, if the door is still open, if the light's still green, keep going until there's a red light. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you just quickly. I think that, maybe those are, God, if he closes this door, opens a window, if it's green, it's green. Well, sometimes there's green lights, sometimes there's red lights, and you're like, I'm just going to keep pushing and see if this thing turns green. You know what I'm saying? Or sometimes there's a green light and you're like, but I don't know if that's my desire anymore. Yeah. And by the way, you made this comment. It's like, if you're in God's will and you're doing what you want to do, I think that's an important piece. Like, I love my job. I absolutely love it, and that's why I keep doing it. But, if God decides one day, that's not the road anymore. If he were to take all this stuff away from me, I think I could be content, on a tractor cutting grass, at a sod farm or something, In fact, there's times where I long for that day, like that's my like, okay, especially on these, like when you're getting back from a trip and you're jet lagged and you feel like you're mentally exhausting, you just like crave like physical, I just need to do something with my hands now. Or I just, what I'm saying? I need to build something. I need to, there's that kind of comes in.
No, I hear you. Well, who knows, Tim? Maybe that day might be sooner than you think. Just finish up this next book you're writing.
I just keep saying, you can, and that's the thing. Again, even like a decision like that, should I write a book or not? And it's like, you know what? I think it's in God's will whether I do it or not.
He plants those desires.
Totally. And that desire is there right now. And so we're kind of sprinting, 15,000 words down, many more to go. But there's a desire there. And I see the need as well. And it's a lot of work. My life would be easier if I didn't do it, But man, I see the impact that this is happening. People keep asking, how do I think like you? I'm like, I'll think like Jesus. And here's how he did it, kind of thing. So that's the goal there.
Awesome. Well, I'm very excited to read that book. Tim, we're going to have like I said from the start, more conversations because there's so much. Can we have a series? This will be part 1, but I'll be conscious of the fact that you have a lot of time to devote to your book. But this has been so fun. Thank you for coming on. It was really a joy to speak with you. But where can listeners find you and learn more about your work?
Sure. Well, before I forget, this was a fun discussion. Okay. It honestly just feels like I'm chatting with an old friend.
That's
not saying you're old, but like I didn't even know we started. I was like, we were just like chatting from when and it was great. You know, it was one of those things that just was so organic and natural. So thanks for having me and being such a good host. People can find me at Stand to Reason, which is a ministry. Our website is str.org. And by the way, my boss, I said, who wrote the book Tactics, I think everyone should read. If they're interested in decision-making in the will of God, that whole topic, he has a ton of articles and stuff on our website. Okay. Like awesome. I'm not the expert in that area. I don't speak on that at all, actually. I'm curious about it. I've read a little bit. But he would be the go-to guy on our website if you're interested. I also have something called Red Pen Logic with Mr. B. So I used to be a full-time teacher. Everyone called me Mr. B, Mr. Barnett, and I would use a red pen to respond to stuff. And we started doing that, responding to things on social media. So these aren't my students, okay? And I know that's kind of like partly the offensive piece of this, as I just pull a tweet offline or a video, and I'm kind of like, doing the red pen thing on it and just trying to help people, because people send me stuff every single day. Like, I'm sure, maybe even during this interview, my inbox probably got a message saying, "Hey, Mr. B, can you respond to this?" And they share a TikTok or an Instagram reel or whatever. And there's a couple of videos coming out this week. So they can, if they go to Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or any of those places, they can find Red Pen Logic. Awesome. And I consider it the welcome mat to apologetics. So if you're just interested in apologetics, what that's all about, here are these 3 to 5 minute videos. And if you like that, then there's lots of great stuff out there on the internet on apologetics that you need to check out.
Awesome. Well, I'll be linking all of those in the show notes. And my very last question for you, Tim, and this is always my favorite one to ask, and that is, what does being well and strong mean to you?
That's a good question. For me, it is a holistic thing. I know I can't function in my job intellectually if I am not feeding my body with the right stuff. And my wife is just so amazing, man. She makes me eat all my veggies and all my protein, like all the protein goals. It's in my coffee. Okay. Like it's collagen, all the stuff. It is like
your wife and I would be friends.
Yeah. She makes sure I have to hit a certain amount of protein and a certain amount, all that stuff. It's physical exercise. Now that's harder, especially with the travel schedule that I have. The routine is hard. And I love a routine. Like I need a routine. And that always gets broken up with all the stuff that's going on. So for me, it's the physical side, it's the health side. And then of course, it's the discipleship side. It's I need, and we didn't go into this too deeply, but finding someone who will disciple you. I mentioned my boss, whom I just love. He's actually my mentor. I should stop calling him my boss because that sounds like an employee and employer relationship. And that's not what it is. He is literally the guy that I go to with all of my questions. He is my kind of spiritual father. I have my biological father is amazing. I love him more than anything. But there's a guy who just knows so much, and I want to be like him when it comes to apologetics. I'm 42. He's 75. I got a little ways to go. I got some growing to do.
That's awesome.
So find someone who can disciple you. Is key, and be a discipler. Anyone. For many of us, it's our kids, but there's friends and family and whoever that you can be discipling, and that's going to help you grow spiritually as well. So for me, being well and strong, it's like the whole package. And I know when one side suffers, if I'm not in that gym, if I'm not eating right, the other side starts to suffer too.
Yeah, so, you feel it.
Yeah, you do. You absolutely feel it. So, and then when it's all going well, it's like, man, you feel like you could run a marathon and then write a systematic theology book or something. Yep. Everything's like just going so well. I'm thinking, what's the equivalent of the marathon with theology? Okay. Yeah.
Think of a word, Tim. I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, this has been so much fun. I'm really excited to share this with listeners. And yeah, can't wait to have another one with you, Tim. It's going to be a series.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it.